This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am sitting here today with Matt Dees from Jonata and The Paring. How are you today, sir?
I'm well, and you?
Fantastic, thank you. So, I had the opportunity to taste your wines last night. Was most impressed, actually. For those of our viewers who are unfamiliar with your wines and your winery, please tell them a little bit about both Jonata and The Paring.
Sure. Both projects are based out of Buellton, California, which is in the heart of San Ynez Valley, about 35-40 minutes north of Santa Barbara, so Central Coast. Jonata was planted in 1999-2000, so the vineyards are now about 10-11 years old. The property was purchased by the two owners back then. It was a cattle ranch. People told us we were a little bit crazy to plant on the type of soil and the area we were looking into, and the owners decided to actually plant 10 different varieties in the property.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone said, look, this is a Syrah region. Syrah's been growing here for 10-15 years. You have to plant Syrah, which thankfully didn't really strike them as enough of a track record to base any decision off of. So
that was at the point when everyone was planting Syrah.
Yeah, it was a big Syrah kick for sure, and God bless Syrah, I love it. But I'm glad we have other grapes as well. So they planted everything out there. We planted Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, Viognier, Grenache, Syrah, Sangiovese, Merlot, Cab Franc, Cab Sauv, and Petit Verdot. Just enough. It's almost easier to tell people what we don't have planted.
Now, it was very particular soil type that you were planting onto. It was very, very deep sand, I believe.
Very, very deep sand, yeah.
Not a soil type with a great track record for producing the best
sure.
of wines in the world.
For sure. We had a couple consultants come out, one of whom told us to plant asparagus, and one of whom told us that the soil was great if we were playing golf.
Oh.
So, in the face of that kind of comment, we still persevered and planted these 10 varieties. And the goal was to say, what works, what doesn't work. Let's throw it all out there and see what sticks. If it doesn't stick, if it doesn't work, we'll tear it out and plant something else.
That's quite a sort of expensive endeavour to get into, especially if you've been advised not to plant
exactly.
grapes on it.
Those are always the best projects.
So how did you manage to make wines of such calibre on what is theoretically such bad soil for growing vines?
Well, you know, I'm a bit of a soil geek,
mm-hmm.
and I saw
a bit of a soil geek. That's what you studied, I believe.
I'm a giant soil geek. Yeah, proud of that. Card-carrying member. But the secret of the soil and the secret to sand is there's no vigor. There's very little water-holding capacity. So you have conditions in which the vine will be very, very low vigor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very, very small clusters. It won't set very much fruit naturally. So we're not fighting against excessive vigor, which I think is often a losing battle. So we do very tight density, very tight spacing with the vines, and we take the crop down to very paltry levels. I mean, up to 4,000 vines an acre, so you're looking at a pound per plant.
Mm-hmm.
And we're able to grow that very small yield of fruit and keep the vine in balance with very low vigor and only water when it's especially necessary. And the vines respond very rapidly with sand. They take up water very quickly.
So drip irrigation you're using there?
We do. Okay. We do actually farm a couple of very sandy blocks dry. We never water them, which is astonishing. It's kind of a head scratcher. But we manage water very, very closely. And we're able to do it. So we end up with wines that are very dark, very intense from the get-go, from the cold soak. And I think a lot of that has to do with that intensity from the sand. And in 2004, I came on board to start making the wine, and that was the first vintage. And we made the 2004, and everything worked. And we made the 05, and everything worked. 06, 07, 08, 09, 10. And, and we had great success, and it wasn't rocket science on my part in the winery. I really firmly believe by the time the grapes get to the winery, the wine should be made. The wine is, in essence, made. You're already written in stone, really, what it should taste like. The vineyard has done that for you. And it just is this property and this climate of San Ynez Valley that just, it's the warm days, the cool breeze off the ocean in the afternoon, and the giant diurnal shift from day to night. So we maintain acidity. We can ripen even the toughest grapes like Cab Franc, Cab Sauv, and Petit Verdot. We can also ripen Sauvignon Blanc with great acidity. We can ripen Sangiovese, which isn't happy anywhere. And we can almost convince it to be happy. And so the project Jonata kind of started out trying to express all these different voices that needed to be expressed off the property. So we produced a Sauvignon Blanc, a Sangiovese, a Merlot, a Cab Franc, a Cab Sauv, a Petit Verdot, a Syrah, a Cab Syrah blend called Todos, And the pairing came out of this project. They were wines that we designed and produced with slightly different flavor profiles. For example, the Pinot Noir, we searched for old vines. We searched for a way to produce a wine that was really more about spice, a bit more about the darker side of Pinot, the forest floor, the mushroom, the things that I love in a Pinot Noir. And we found it in Old Vineyard in Santa Rita Hills.
That was the Sanford and Benedict?
Sanford and Benedict, yeah. We were able to lease about 30 acres that we farm now.
Now, you were saying there, like, you were focusing upon the black fruits there. Last night when we tasted this, it was exhibiting quite a lot of red fruit.
The bright red fruit of Santa Rita with, I think, more of the complex spice, tobacco, cigar, forest floor, mushroom. But yeah, Santa Rita, by its very nature, has that boisterous, red, bright, light, flashing fruit that I love. And it's identifiably that region.
Mm-hmm.
And with the pairing red, for example, we tried to create a very varietally sincere Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blend. So it walks that line. It has the black fruit, but also the olive tapenade, a little bit of the herbal edge that is inherently Cabernet Sauvignon.
If you were wishing to help a lazy wine journalist, what would you compare this to?
For the lazy wine journalist, the 06 pairing red.
What would be most similar to?
It's a really interesting question. I think of it in terms of being a baby El Alma or El Desafío.
Right.
I think it's purely Santa Ynez.
Right.
And we do blend in some other fruit, but the core of this wine is always Santa Ynez. And Santa Ynez, to me, Cabernet Sauvignon grown responsibly and with diligence, it has this core of black fruit that's undeniably Californian. But because the cooler climate, the great diurnal shift, and just the growing season period, it maintains that, again, varietal sincerity with that herbal edge, the tapenade, the dust, almost like the Rutherford dust from Rutherford and Napa. And this has all of our wines off our property. A lot of it's probably up here, but a lot of the wines have very sandy, silty, like a silty sand kind of tannin. And this is no different. It has just immense amounts of tannin, but they're all very soft. And that's something that we really strive for on the property and that we get very easily off the soils we have.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you feel that the wine should almost be made by the time it gets to the winery. Mm-hmm. However, I know that you're also an advocate of the application of science to make a better wine, and that must happen in the winery also.
It does. I came to wine through a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm.
I came to wine through the vineyard, obviously. And I didn't do Davis, which I respect and I love that school. And many of my dear friends and some of my best colleagues are Davis graduates. I kind of approached the winery aspect from learning from people who I really respected. I apprenticed under a number of producers. I've been very lucky to apprentice under Andy Erickson, who gave me my first job at Stagland Family back in 2001, and the late, great Doug Weiser at Craigie Ranch, who was a dear friend and a mentor to me. So I watched the way that they made wine. I studied.
That's Craigie Range in New Zealand.
In New Zealand, yes, in Hawke's Bay. And I was fortunate to be able to learn from them and apprentice and kind of on-the-job training to me, which is not that that's not scientific, and not that you don't need to be technically proficient to be able to solve problems in the winery, but the practices we do in the winery are very traditional, very traditional. We don't really, we pick fruit based on the flavor. We pick fruit based largely on tannin structure in St. Inez Valley, and tannin development, phenological ripeness. We don't use very many numbers, and a lot of people say that, and it's very easy to say, and it's probably cliche to say these days, but we really don't. And it's not that we're not being diligent, it's just that we feel that science can't measure everything.
So you would say that all of these wines are truly more an expression of the vineyard than of the winemaker's hand.
100%.
So Alice Fearing wouldn't be calling these wines spoofulated now.
I don't know what she would say. I haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting her. I look forward to. But it's an interesting process when you start a project, when there's no track record, and you're a young winemaker. So stylistically, I was 25 when I started making these wines, and we were fortunate to work with Michel Rolland in helping the blend, but early on, it was really just experimentation to see what voice the vineyard really had, and it became evident immediately.
Now, Michel Rolland is often given a lot of interesting press regarding the being aligned with some more concocted or manufactured wines. But you mentioned last night that you found working with him during that assemblage, that blending process, absolutely amazing because of his history, his experience.
Oh, it's a breathtaking, it's a humbling experience. And I mean, I have nothing but wonderful things to say about the man. I think he's brilliant. I think he's very talented. I think he has the experience to back up his reputation. And yeah, it's a mind-blowing thing to sit down with a gentleman who has seen so many wines made and who understands the art of blending. It really is an art. It really is an incredible talent. It's something that you have to gain. I remember one time somebody asked him whether he got the gene for tasting from his mother or his father, and he just laughed like he always does, and he said, I think he just answered, I think I've tasted 1 million wines or something along those lines. I mean, that's what it is. It was the experience,
right, yeah.
and as a young winemaker, to have access to that experience and that kind of knowledge of how a wine will develop. It's easy for young wineries to say, give this wine 10 to 15. This will be at its best at 10 to 15 years. Really? You know, I would love to think it will, and I have faith that it will, but I think it's very responsible to have someone on board on your team who can help guide you and help you make blends that really will succeed in what you're shooting for. Help you achieve the goals you want. You want a wine that will age well, a wine that drinks well young as well. Michel was an obvious choice.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for spending some time with us today at Good Food Revolution. We're hoping to come down and visit you down at the winery at some point. You've got some interesting projects going on down there.
Yeah, come down.
If you wouldn't mind expanding on that would be fantastic.
Sure. We I went to the University of Vermont, and it was very big into kind of alternative agriculture and certainly into sustainability and new farming systems. And at Jonata we have a 600-acre ranch. It's beautiful, and rolling hills and plenty of space. And we've only planted the best 83 acres. So we had 520 acres out there, and we started getting back into, I guess there's no point in calling it new agriculture. It's the original agriculture, which was, moving away from herbicides, moving away from pesticides, getting back into a different way to fertilize, which is chickens. Chickens are very good at a number of things, laying eggs, scratching, also renewing the soil with nitrogen, as they do, as only chickens can do. So in weak parts of the vineyard, we take the chicken coops. We had about 400 chickens, and we let the chickens do what they want.
400 now?
Yeah, we have an awful lot.
Right.
So we ended up with an awful lot of eggs, and we took those eggs and we made some arrangements and traded the eggs for goods with some caterers in Santa Barbara. With the money we got from that, we bought rare breed turkeys, which we now raise. We bought a small herd of goat and sheep. Note to everybody out there, a small herd of goat and sheep doesn't stay small for very long. So we went from 10 or 12 animals, we're now up to 120. So we do cabrito and lamb production. My wife and I make cheese from goat milk and sheep milk. We're doing hogs on the property, feeding them on acorns. We're capturing and raising some live pig, or some feral pigs, and doing the same. We have, who else do we have out there? We're doing olive oil production and olive curing. We have apiculture. We've got a couple hives that are going in the back of the property. Our cellar master started growing hops. So we're producing a Jonata beer, which is still in the works. And we have a 3-acre vegetable garden and a 50-tree orchard, fruit orchard. And part of our goal with this is to have a dinner where you can have all Jonata products and get back to the more integrated, diversified farming systems. Part of the pleasure also is that it's a very responsible way to farm. If you can feed everyone who works for you and contribute food back to the community, it's a system that is incredibly sustainable, incredibly responsible.
I'm surprised you have any time left to make wine.
Sheep and goats are pretty self-sufficient. They don't need a lot of time. Chickens is another story. But it's a special property. We would love to have you down there.
Excellent. Hopefully we'll see you down there sometime in the next 12 months or so.
Sounds very good.
Take care, Matt. Thank you.